My father was born in Chico, California. There are not many black families in Chico, California, and I do not know how they arrived there. But he was born there. He left home when he was 16 and went to Los Angeles to find his way, whatever that was. He was an adventurous, entrepreneurial type young man, and he got into Los Angeles, got a job at the Los Angeles Times as a bookbinder and a linotyper. They taught him how to do the linotype. He was, again, one of the few blacks who would ever work at the Los Angeles Times. We're still researching that. He went to World War I, and became a sergeant. He was drafted. Was drafted into the United States Army and into the 365th Battalion.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember that number because that's a famous battalion. That's the Buffalo Soldiers.
Oh, really?
Yes. And he served in France in the medical corps, really right at the front lines where he was treating people men who were wounded.
He was a medic.
He was a medic, but he didn't have medical training.
I see.
And he was gassed in World War I severely. They gassed the farmhouse where they had taken refuge, and that later on that caused a disability.
These were the Germans who were gassed?
Yes.
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 He married my mother in 1920. My mother comes from an entrepreneurial family. She was born in Houston, Texas, and her father was a businessman who traveled all through the Southwest and started new businesses, including a candy factory of candy made out of cactus plants.
Oh, my.
I mean, really exotic stuff. But he and my grandmother met and went to Nogales, Arizona, where they established themselves. And he had owned several businesses. They owned several businesses, a large restaurant, the pool hall, the local movie house. And they were right on the Mexican border. And so they had a lot of interchange with Mexico, and ended up also going to Guaymas, Mexico, where they set up a fishing operation.
My goodness.
So they were all over the map in terms of new kinds of things.
Did they speak Spanish?
And they spoke Spanish, and my grandmother, her background is very mysterious because she said they called her a half-bred when she was a child. She would never tell us where she came from. She has a Mexican last name, so we're assuming that she's Mexican, or part Mexican, part black. But beautiful woman, very exciting, dynamic person who was my grandfather's partner in every way. And I'm sure that the things he established, she had a big hand in his establishing those things. My mother grew up in, as I said, in Nogales, and then she went to Tuskegee Institute. And now at that time, I think Tuskegee Institute was a normal school of some kind, and she was there for 2 years. After she met my father, they moved to West Los Angeles. And the big excitement for our family and a sense of security that we developed was the very fact that my father, though he had very little money, had just come out of the Army, bought a house in Los Angeles on the west side of town where not many Negroes lived at that time. And in fact, they still had restrictive covenants in the deeds in Los Angeles at that time. And his light-skinned...
In terms of not selling to black people.
Not selling to black
Yes.
people. And so he had his light-skinned friend, Buell, purchase the house for him and transfer it to him. But that's the kind of tactics that they had to employ because of the restrictions that were placed on them. And our families worked in the school system. We didn't go to segregated schools. We went to integrated schools. But there were black schools in certain areas. The school, Jefferson High, which has just had a riot last week, began as a black school, and my family wouldn't send me there. They sent me to Manual Arts because it was an integrated school and it had all kinds of values that they cherished. So my parents were, my mother stayed home for the first years of their marriage, but my father, after being gassed in France, developed a cardiac condition and became not disabled to the point that he had to go to bed or became an invalid, but there were things he couldn't do. So he quit his job, or retired, I should say, because the Los Angeles Times made a big thing of his retirement. And they sent baskets of fruit to the house, and all things were coming to the house all the time. So we knew he was special for them as well. My mother had been working with her friend, can't think of her name at the moment, who had a catering business. And she learned the business from her friend, the experiences with her friend. And as soon as my father retired, she set up her own catering business. And because my mother felt that I was her companion in everything, not to mention the one that get all the tasks were assigned to me, and I was never quite sure whether that was an honor or whether I was being dominated by my mother. But anyway, so when she went into the catering business, I went into the catering business with her. I was about 12 or so. I was very tall. She dressed me up in a maid's uniform, and she did the kitchen, and I did the front room, and did the serving and all that kind of thing. I learned a lot from those early experiences. She paid me 50 cents an hour.
Oh.
And I learned to make money, and I learned to feel that I needed to be independent very early. So from the time I was 12 till now, I have always worked. She and my grandmother were both very independent women, and not aggressively so, because they always cared for other people, and were, in fact, part of the beauty of their type of independence is that you have the responsibility for taking care of others.
That's right.
And you do it with joy and with not feeling that you're making sacrifices and that kind of thing.